All right, so we'll just get started. This meeting will be recorded. We'll send it out to you guys after the presentation is done. It'll also be published to our YouTube page in case there was anyone you wanted to share it with. If you have any teens or anyone that you're attending this webinar on their behalf, you'll be able to share it with them so that they can have a look at it a little bit later, okay? So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so welcome guys. Thanks so much for joining me today, this early morning. For some of you, really appreciate you guys taking the time to join on this webinar about short-term language programs in Europe for teens. So these are specifically for teen programs, so usually ages 11 to 17. We'll get into a little bit more about here. But yeah, so thanks so much for joining. Okay. So I'll just ask, I think all of your microphones are off automatically, but I'll just ask that you keep them off for the duration of the meeting. There is a little chat box at the bottom of the screen. If you can see it, it looks like a little message icon. So if there's any questions that you can think of, feel free to drop them throughout the presentation in that chat box, okay? And I will get back to them at the end. I can't monitor it and look at the presentation at the same time, so I will get back to them, back to you a little bit more at the end, okay? So if you think of anything during the meeting, feel free to drop it in that chat box. Otherwise, there will be a Q&A session where you can turn your microphone on at the end and ask me any questions that you might have if you didn't put them in the chat during the presentation, okay? So yeah, so today this webinar will probably last about 30 minutes, so I won't take too much of your time. Hopefully you guys can get a lot of good information in that time as well, okay? So about Beyond the States, so I'm not sure how many of you are already members of Beyond the States or if you're new to us, but just to give you a little bit of background on who we are. So we are international education consultants who specialize in Europe and the UK. We believe that higher education is a right, not a privilege. So we've dedicated ourselves and our company to helping students pack their bags and study in Europe, where higher education is more accessible, enjoyable, and affordable for everyone, even English speakers. So our main service that we do offer is more, you know, bachelor's degree and master's full degree program counseling, but we do offer little side services like this one. So language camps for teens, short-term language programs, and international internship counseling for people who might not want to, you know, go to Europe for a full 3-year degree. Or in the case of teens who would be looking at this type of program, it's a good way to kind of dip their toes in the water, see how they feel about Europe, if they even like going there before, you know, ultimately committing to a full 3-year program. So that's just a little bit about us. So what are summer language programs for teens? So it's kind of like a summer camp, really. So these programs only take place in the summer. They're going to be a little bit different than your standard language courses in the sense that they are really only for teens. So like I mentioned earlier, there are different age ranges, which we'll get into, but usually students in these summer programs won't be with any adults. So it's quite nice for students of that age to go there, be with people their own age, and, you know, kind of explore a different country, have a little bit of fun, make some friends, and of course learn a language as well. So it's depending on which type of program, they could be mixtures of learning, adventure, where they study in the morning, and then in the afternoon they can attend activities, have group meals, make friends. Most of the camps are actually run by long-established schools who have experience in hosting students, both young and adults, and safety is always going to be the top priority for them. So it's a really fun and confidence-boosting way to spend a few weeks in the summer. So yeah, like I said, a lot of the camps are run by long-established schools. So these would be, you know, language schools that throughout the year, they normally would offer maybe more courses for adults or for 16 and over. But in the summer, they tend to put together these really fun kind of programs, you know, for international teens. So why would, you know, you or your teen want to consider a language study program like this? So as I mentioned earlier, it's an immersive learning experience that helps teens gain fluency faster and with more confidence. So by actually being immersed in the country around local people, potentially staying with a host family, they'll have more experience to more opportunities, sorry, to practice their language skills outside of the classroom in real time. So that's one reason why some people might want to go to this program. Like I said, teens live the language through daily interactions, activities, and excursions. It's a great way as well, to build independence, adaptability, and intercultural understanding, especially at a young age. It could be a lot of these students' first time leaving their home country, maybe even their home state, you never know. So it's a good way for them to go for a shorter term that's, very supervised and secure so that they can gain a little bit of independence. It helps with future study abroad goals or even college applications. So if they decide that they really liked the country that they were doing their language study in, they might decide that they want to do a full bachelor's program in a few years. So it's a good way, like I said, to kind of test it out and see how they like it. And of course, it looks great on college applications for European ones and for US ones as well. It shows that they were able to go out and do something in a different country and, be adaptable and in a different, completely different cultural and language setting as well. And like I said before, it's a fun and a very structured way to travel safely. So what these programs look like, okay? So again, they really vary depending on which style of camp. I'll go through a few examples later, but depending on which style of camp you might be choosing for them. But typically, they do kind of have similar structures. So usually in the morning, they'd be doing their classes. So the classes are usually 15 or 20 hours per week. So the students would be studying in the morning for 3 to 4 hours of intensive learning. So they're doing that 5 days a week, every single morning. Usually small groups. So I'd say the most students that you'd find in a class would be up to 20, and then the classrooms can be as small as 5 or 6 students as well. Sometimes they might split them up in different levels if there are different levels of fluency, of different levels of language skills in the camp group. They might split them into different classrooms. So yeah, usually they're smaller, up maximum 20 people really, but I'd say usually there's about 10 to 12 students. So it's a nice small group where they focus on conversation and culture. Sometimes there are, small group projects that they can work on throughout the duration of their course. Different things like there was one program that I worked with, and it was kind of like a business and language focused program. So the students were there for 2 weeks, and they actually had to create a company and present it in English to the teachers at the end of the 2 weeks. So they were put into little groups. So there can be really fun, more interactive and immersive projects like that as well, that can also tip into other fields of study. So not just language learning, but could also go into business or maybe science. There are a few different options for these as well. Then in the afternoon, they'll usually do sports. They might do some arts and crafts, or they might do some excursions, depending on the day. It could be going and doing city tours if they're in a city, could be going to local museums, or any kind of activity. So they usually do like that in the afternoons. In the evenings, it can be, there might be some social events. Sometimes they might not have them every night, but it could be, barbecues, movie nights, talent shows. They love to take the students bowling as well. That's always a good one in all the camps that I've seen. So I'd say you could definitely expect bowling and karaoke nights as well. They love to take the students for karaoke. So that's a good one. And then as far as accommodation and supervision. So like I said, these are all, established schools who have gone through extensive safety training. So that your teens are very safe in the hands of these schools. So the classrooms are supervised. And then as far as the accommodation goes, there are a few different options depending on which school you're choosing. A lot of these camps do tend to place students in student residences. So these are residences that would be used during the school year for university students. But during the summer, they're usually empty. So these language schools and camp programs will usually rent them out for the summer months to host their students. There's always going to be like a resident, a dorm resident in the dorms from the school that will be there to supervise them. So that's one option. And some other students might opt for host family accommodation, where they would be staying with a local family, which is an absolutely excellent way to, really experience the culture and really practice the language outside of the classroom as well. And it's a really nice and safe environment. All these host families are vetted. They've usually been doing it for years, so they're quite experienced. And that would be kind of the accommodation options that there are for these students. Meals and laundry are provided. So the food is taken care of. If they're staying in a host family, there'll be given the meals by the family. I will say one thing is, this is always something we have to prepare the students for, is that it's going to be a different diet than what they're used to, depending on where they are. It could be different meal times as well. You know, if they're going to Spain, they might not be used to eating dinner at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, but they will have to adjust a little bit. So just some things to take into consideration when you're selecting countries as well, is just to kind of prepare the teens for the meals. It's usually a bit of a shock. I find that's one of the big shocks to a lot of students, is the food and and the meals. So just something to think of as well. Laundry is provided as well. So usually the students are able to wash their clothes about once a week. So that's just something to think about as well, is to pack enough clothes and stuff to last 1 week, because usually they'll only do it once a week. Yeah, and then program. So usually they're from 1 to 4 weeks, but there are some that you can go up to 8 weeks, but they are a little bit more uncommon. Usually the programs that I see are about 2 to 3 weeks. Up to 4 weeks would be the most normal time, but there are some longer ones as well. But 2 to 4 weeks is a good amount of time for, you know, young teens to be away from home, I think. So it's a good amount of time. So yeah, I went through this earlier, but yeah, this would be a, you know, typical timetable. Usually in the morning they have breakfast together, either at the host family, or if they're staying in the residence, it will be provided in the residence usually. And then of course the language classes, lunch break, activities, dinner, evening karaoke. And I didn't mention this earlier, but on the weekends, they usually take them out to do full day trips. So they might have, let's say, 1 day of free time in the weekend, and then 1 day will be an activity. So it could be visiting a town nearby. It could be, you know, I put Nice, Paris, Madrid, Munich, depending on where they're going. It could be taking them on a hike somewhere in the outdoors. It could be taking them surfing if they're on the coast. It could be taking them to a cooking class, or any kind of fun activity that they might be doing on the weekends. Okay, a few things to consider, you know, when you're speaking with your teens about this, is which languages spark their interest? Which languages do they want to learn? The most popular ones, of course, are usually going to be Western European ones. So you'll find French, Spanish, German, Italian, sometimes English. I don't know if anyone here is not American or not from an English-speaking family, but there are English programs as well that they can go to, usually in the UK and Ireland and even Malta. So if they wanted to learn English, they can go to those countries as well. But that's something that you'll need to consider, is which language they want to learn, of course. Program type. So if they want more of an academic focused, if they want more of an outdoor adventure focused, more of a culture heavy program, more of a multi-sport program. So all things to kind of take into consideration. And like I mentioned earlier as well, you know, sometimes these academic programs could be, you know, business focused, where they prepare information about a company and present it. They could be science focused. They could be, you know, all different types of focuses. There's really a lot to choose from. A lot of these schools have gotten very creative over the years with the types of programs that they offer. So if the fluency is high enough, they can usually do one of these more, you know, more focused programs as well. And then accommodation. So something that you'll want to discuss with your teens as well, is if they prefer to stay in a dorm versus a homestay, or as the parent, if you would prefer for them to stay in a dorm or homestay. Both are very, you know, safe environments, very good environments, but it just depends on where you would prefer for them to stay. And then again, you know, the duration, how long do you want to send them away? How long do they want to be away for? Usually, yeah, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks is what I would recommend, especially for a first-time student. Supervision and safety. So again, this is something that you'll want to consider if you're looking for these programs on your own. I would definitely recommend to ask the schools, if you can't find the information on the website, is to ask about what the staff to student ratios are. You want to make sure that there's enough staff there just to feel secure, and what kind of medical support they offer as well. You know, if they will accompany them to the hospital, usually they do, but you just want to make sure to know their kind of policies, just so you feel secure on that. But usually they're very good with medical and health and safety, so you should be good. But just things to definitely make note of if you're looking for these programs on your own. And again, your budget. So there are some programs that are more expensive. There are some that are less expensive. Again, it's going to depend on if you're in a city versus a small town, if you're in Eastern Europe versus Western Europe, if it's a full program with like loads of activities, it's usually going to be a little bit more expensive. So you'll want to take into consideration how much money you're able to spend on this as well. Okay, so I wanted to go through a couple samples of some programs that I've worked with in the past. So this one is more of an urban one. So it's a language and culture camp in a city. So usually they're based in Paris, Berlin, Barcelona. There could be other cities as well. But these would be more for students that want to get an urban vibe, big city feel, see if they like the city. These are really good as well for students that might want to attend university abroad, because it'll really get them to have a feel for the city itself before they go to schools. So again, it's going to be, the same thing I said earlier. So language lessons in the morning, afternoon is going to be visits to museums, markets, local landmarks, usually within the city. The cultural workshops that they can do in the city type camps are usually going to be cooking classes, could be photography, visiting theaters or performances in the local language. A lot of European cities become very vibrant in the summer as well. There's lots of festivals, so they might be taking the students to festivals, stuff like that. Sometimes there are networking events depending on the age of the students as well that they can attend, which is quite nice. And then again, the weekend excursions are usually going to be just to nearby kind of smaller cities, like the ones in Paris might take the students to Versailles for the weekend. If they're in Spain, they might go to Costa Brava, just kind of neighboring cities that aren't too far, just that they can see a different place. The accommodation for these ones are usually going to be in the residences. You won't find as many homestay options in the city type camps. They're usually going to be in the residences because there's a lot more of these residences available in the cities. So this is good for students who want a balance of academics, culture, and fun in an urban setting. Just something to consider as well, though, about the city programs is, in the cities, especially big cities in Europe, they tend to be a lot more globalized, a lot more international. So they might not have as much chance to practice the language outside of the classroom. If they go to shops, everyone speaks a good amount of English. So they might not feel as forced or as pressured to kind of practice it outside of the classroom. So just one thing to kind of consider about that type of program. Okay, outdoor and adventure focus. So these ones are a lot of fun. These are really fun programs. So they're usually going to be set in scenic mountain or coastal regions like the Swiss Alps, northern Italy, southern France. Beautiful locations where they can have their language lessons in the morning. Sometimes they even do these language lessons outside if the weather is nice, and if they have the opportunity to set up classrooms outside. I've seen it before. It's pretty cool. And then in the afternoon, it's usually going to be almost all outdoor focus. So depending on where they are, it could be kayaking on the lake, going for hikes. If they're in a beach setting, it could be beach volleyball or surfing, mountain biking, nature photography. So they're usually going to be a lot more outdoor focused, which is really nice. Excursions would be, to local festivals, historic towns nearby, natural parks, with an emphasis on teamwork, leadership, and learning through experience. Accommodation for these ones, because they tend to be a little bit more remote, it could be like cabins or dorms that are nearby. So there's, again, not as many options for host families in these. It is possible to find, but a lot of times it could be cabins where you have group leaders and support. People will be supervising them. So this is great for teens who want to do a little bit of learning, but kind of want to have a little bit more of an outdoor camp feel as well. It's a great opportunity to make friends, build teamwork. It's a great opportunity for that. This one, so these would be more full cultural immersion in a small town. So as opposed to the urban programs like I talked about earlier, these ones, when you're in a smaller town in Europe, I'm not sure how many of you have been to small towns in Europe, but you would probably know they don't have as much English in these towns. So going to a program like this would be a great way to really, I don't want to say throw them in the deep end, but kind of, they'll be forced to actually try to use their language a lot more than they would in a city program. Okay, so these are usually in smaller towns or villages. Could be Poland, could be Sweden, or the Nordic countries have a lot of really cool programs there as well. France, anywhere in rural France is great for this type of language study. So students in these ones would usually be living with a host family. There aren't as many universities in this town. There aren't as many student dorms. So it's often going to be host family accommodation, which in my opinion is that's my favorite type of accommodation for students. I just think it's so great that they're with a family, they can practice their language, it's very safe. These host moms become very attached to the kids. It's like a second family. So I think the host families are just great options. So again, they'll have their classes, in the morning. And then in the afternoon, what I've seen with a lot of these smaller town programs is, they'll go to family outings, local festivals, everyday cultural experience. But a lot of these smaller programs have the students going out into the community and giving back. So there could be some volunteer work involved as well. Depending on, what's going on, it could be volunteering at a festival, it could be, forest cleanups, it could be all kinds of stuff like that. Or working in the community garden was one I saw that was really cool. So they had the students going and helping in the community garden a couple afternoons per week while they were there. And it's very rewarding for students. So these are kind of nice programs. So this is something to think about as well. Weekend trips, it could be visits to regional landmarks. I put a few examples here. Could be visiting Lake Como, Salzburg, and like I said, could include community-based volunteering as well. So this one is really good to encourage independence, adaptability, and genuine connection. This is good for mature students that are really looking for deep immersion over a more structured environment. So this is a good one. I would definitely suggest, though, before going to this one, to download Duolingo and get a little bit of Duolingo in before, just because, like I said, there's not as much English around. So it's good to have a little bit of practice before going. So program outcomes. So what students really gain from these programs, of course, is building confidence speaking another language. That's, the main thing. Fosters independence and problem solving skills. So this is a huge thing for teens to be at that age. These programs can be anyone from 11 up to 17. Sometimes the ages are a little bit not as broad. So I've seen some programs are just for 12 to 15-year-olds. Sometimes there are programs just for 16, 17-year-olds, but pretty much anyone from 11 to 17 would be able to find one of these programs, okay? So it's amazing for them to be able to go and do this, be away from their parents, be away from their hometown, and, just feel what it's like to be independent. So I think that's one of the main benefits as well. And again, develops cultural understanding and empathy. So they get the opportunity to see, how another family might live or how people in another country are living. It's quite nice. Creates lifelong friendships from around the world, which is great. I always say this, no matter which type of program you're doing in Europe, it's always great to make contacts, even at that age. You never know what could come in the future. So it's great to make all these international friends. Strengthens college applications, of course. So global awareness is always a plus. No matter which country they're applying to university, it's great to have. And of course, it's fun, safe, and a great memory for them to have. As far as costs and practicalities, so as I mentioned earlier, there are some programs that are less expensive. There are some that are a little bit more expensive, but you can expect to spend about €1,000 per week, okay? Sometimes they're a little bit more, sometimes they're a little bit less. It just depends again on which accommodation, but usually about, let's say 1,500 to 3,000 for 2 to 3 weeks. I'd say about €1,000 per week is a good baseline. Extras that they'll need is going to be flights. So the flights aren't included in these programs. That's something that's separate that you'll need to look after yourselves. Insurance. So definitely get insurance for your teens before they go away. Spending money, so they might need money for an international SIM card or anything like that. Even though, all their meals are included and everything like that, they might want to pick up some souvenirs. So, they'll need a little bit of spending money, and visa costs as well if needed. Most of the time for these short-term programs, they don't need a visa. But you never know, things might change in the European Union next year or the year after, so you never know. They might need a bit of spending money for a short-term visa. I don't think so, but you never know. When to book? So most of the camps open their applications and reservation systems for starting in October, and they'll take applications up until April as long as there's still place. So the earlier you want to do this, the better better, yeah, the better it is, just to make sure that they get their preferred destination. And again, you know, some of these camps only have a certain amount of people that they can accept. So if a lot of people are applying at the beginning, then there might not be spaces if you wait too long. And a lot of these schools, actually, the earlier you book, they might give you discounts. So they might give you an early bird booking discount, which is always nice to get a discount. Safety as well, you know, all the camps are licensed, staff are trained. Communication with your teens, I mean, now look, they have email, they have mobile phones, it's a bit easier to get in contact with them, but it's, yeah, so it's, most allow phone check-ins, or they might set specific call hours to balance independence, but usually the students are texting their parents every day, so that's not to worry about that. Okay. So yeah, so like I said, if this is something that you're considering for your teen, let's just say for next summer, for summer of 2026, we're November 5th right now, November 4th right now, I would definitely start researching programs at this stage and kind of building a short list, making sure that, you know, the program that you're looking at kind of ticks all of your boxes as terms of safety, content, age ranges, all of that kind of stuff. Start building a bit of a short list for yourself. I put January to March, but some programs are already starting to accept the application. So you can start submitting applications and deposits. The applications, I mean, it's not much really. It's usually just filling in a form with some details. It's usually not that intensive, but they might sometimes ask you a few questions. So you'll need to submit those applications as well. And then by April or May, or even sooner if you can, arrange flights, visas if needed, and insurance. I should put the eSIM. Yeah, all the students now are getting eSIM. So that's something that you can organize in advance. And then the camps usually run anywhere from June, July, or August. So those are the 3 months that they can kind of access the camps. So yeah, that's kind of the timeline and next steps. We can help you, of course, narrow down options and advise on programs. So we do offer a counseling service for this. You'd be working directly with myself, where I would meet you. Well, first I'd get you to fill out a really detailed intake form where I'd ask questions about preference, and then we would meet for about half an hour. And then it takes me about 2 to 3 weeks, and I would curate a list of 3 summer camps that I think would be perfect for your teen. I'd give you a breakdown of what the content is, how much it costs, when you can submit your deposit, if you're able to book it on your own, or if you need an agent to book it for you. Usually you can go ahead and book them on your own, but some programs want them to be booked by an agent. So I'll let you know. I'm an agent, so I'd be able to do it for you, but usually you can just go ahead and book it on your own. So we will send a follow-up email after with all information on you know, how this service works and the booking link. So if you did want us to help you and you didn't want to try to do it on your own, we're here to help with that as well. So that's kind of everything from my end. So almost exactly 30 minutes, like I said. I hope that this helps give a little bit of insight into what the programs might look like. I'm just going to close this now, and I see a few questions in the chat, so I'll just get to those. Okay, Samantha Robinson, can teens who have specific dietary requirements be accommodated? Yes, absolutely. So if there's any allergies or any, you know, if they're vegetarian or if they need to eat halal food or anything like that, it can be accommodated. I will say sometimes there is a surcharge depending on what the dietary restriction is. Like if the host families or if the camp needs to buy special food for that person, it could be a surcharge, a weekly up fee, but not always. So that's just something to think about if they do have dietary requirements, that there could be just an additional fee for that. Are there LGBTQ friendly programs? Yes, absolutely there are. So that's something that if we work together, we can discuss this a little bit more in detail, you know, what your concerns are, what type of program you might be looking for, because there are some definitely that we could help you find. Are these institutions accredited and recognized by the U.S. Department of Education in order for 529 plans to pay for the programs? Some of them, and this is the same, not just for language schools, but for universities as well. So some schools in Europe will work with FAFSA, they will work with 529 plans, but it's not all of them. So it's really a case-by-case basis. You would need to ask the school every time, you know, what if they accept this. There is a website online where you can put the name of any academic institution and it'll tell you if they accept 529 plans or not. I can get that included in the email so that you can check. But definitely it is something that can be looked at, but it's not guaranteed that they'll take it. I am 34. Is it okay for me to join the event? So these particular programs are really for students aged 11 to 17, okay? These aren't for adults. There are other types of programs for adults that would be language immersion, so language programs. These are usually for people aged 16 and over. They would be a little bit different than this. So that's another webinar, but there is something that you can do, but it would be less of like a summer camp kind of feel. But I can send you some more information on those programs, Goitem, and I can send that to you by email. Are there French language schools in countries other than France? Yes, there are. I actually know a few that are in Switzerland. You'll have some in Belgium as well. So there are a few options, and there are some schools, to be honest with you, that do multi-languages in one school. So in Spain, there's some schools that teach German, that teach French, that teach Spanish, that teach Russian. So there are some schools that do offer other languages, but just keep in mind if they're doing they're trying to learn French in Germany, let's say, they won't have the immersion aspect. Samantha, does Beyond the States provide services to help people over 18 find immersion programs? Yes, we do. So I can send you an email just with those other services. Like I said, it's a bit different from this one. So Samantha, I'll send you an email after this with the information. Okay. Do I recommend the American kids tell the other campers unless they're Canadian citizens? No, I don't think it's necessary. At this point, I wouldn't be recommending that. They can say they're American. There's no problem. All right. Does anyone have any other questions that weren't dropped in the chat? You can unmute yourself and ask away if you wanted. No? Okay, perfect. I see Julie just dropped one. Is this presentation recorded? Yes, it is. So you can share it. It won't be available until tomorrow. I don't know why Google Meet takes so long to process the recording, but we'll send everything out by tomorrow, okay? And it'll be on our YouTube channel as well. Okay, perfect. So look, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. I know it's a lot of information to absorb in half an hour, but I hope it gives you guys a little bit more insight on what these programs look like. Like I said, this recording will be sent out, and we'll send you guys more information as well if you did want to go ahead with any of our services. We'll give you my email as well. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me at any point. But thanks again for joining. It was really great speaking to you all, and have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone. Thanks.